And we're live. Greetings and salutations, Focused Up family. Welcome to the October 19th, 2024 Middle Age Mutant Ninja Politics. With starring Student X. You got me, Mr. Nice Guy. Nice is in the word state spelled backwards. We have Brother Afro Agnostics. And, we may have Brother Youssef in there. But, this show is all global. It's all politics, global and domestic. We thank you for tuning with us live, on YouTube and various other platforms. And we ask that you click on click on that like, that subscribe, that bell, and share to support and maintain your Focus Up fix. So, the opinions may be controversial and you'll hear things that sound like praise of polarizing figures. We're not endorsing anybody. Our politics are not party-based. We lean on policy here, and we stand on melanation. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to you, brother, Student X. That's what's up. You like that, Afro Agnostics?
Yeah, melanation. Yeah. What's good, brothers? How y'all doing? Oh, yeah. Pretty good. Good. So, look, regardless of what Brother Nice says, I'm the star of the show. That's not the case. The star of the show is our viewers and, of course, our guests, So, I'm just a brother that's here just to have some dialogue, with the people, and that's what we're going to do today, So today's topic, we were going to just, go ahead and just follow up on our flagship show, which is the Focus Up show that takes place 9 o'clock every Saturday. It's been like that for the last 4+ years, but here at Mutant Politics, like I said, we just get into it and just sometimes continue that dialogue. And that's exactly what's taking on or going on today. It's just a continuation of that dialogue. So let's have our brother, Afro Agnostics, introduce himself. This is the first time I'm meeting Politics. So, brother, go ahead and share something with us about yourself.
Okay, yes. My involvement in politics, I guess, going back 20-something years. Initially, I was what appealed to me was religious nationalism. I got involved in groups like the Nation of Islam, the 5%, Nation of Gods and Earth, Ansar Sect community. That was my initial attraction. And I've always, in a way, I kind of like an alchemist, kind of got to the base of what those religious nationalist groups were about. And that base to me became Black nationalism. So from there, I launched into NCOBRA, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, and ended up with the Malcolm X grassroots movement and became a member of the New African Independence Movement. And that's kind of, a thumbnail of my politics.
We're all honorable organizations, and I can see, just knowing, having interacted with you a few times, I can see how each one of those organizations have shaped, your focus on different issues and whatnot. That's a good thing, So, Brother Nice, man, why don't you go ahead and just, launch us into what we're going to talk about, brother. Where should we start off at since you host the Focus Up?
All right. So you know what? Let's first. So what we were talking about is, Kamala Harris has done these interviews with Charlemagne the God and Bret Baier on Fox. One of them was definitely much more friendly than the other ones, but the criticism was that she wasn't doing these interviews. She's been out there doing them. When you're talking about the podcast with All the Smoke, the Howard Stern, the View, the Tonight Show, whatever. I don't know. It wasn't the Tonight Show. I don't remember which one it was. But the bottom line is she's at least been putting that out there. You may not agree with what she has to say. You may not agree with her execution, but you can no longer make the argument that she's not doing them. Trump has been on the rounds for a while. I would argue he hasn't been doing a whole lot of interviews, but he did a pretty good one with I believe it's the Economic Club of Chicago. We'll talk about that later. But let's first talk about what we saw with the Kamala Harris interview with Charlemagne the God and Bret Baier.
Yes, sir. Well, I started off obviously on our Focus Up show. I just brought up the point, and we don't have to get too much into it because we did cover it there. But we touched on why every time she really addresses Black men, one of the things that she leads off on was marijuana. Which again, as someone who, is not, a Democrat or Republican, but definitely do not lean towards, liberal and Democrat, policies mostly, that is just not an issue for me, despite those I might know a little bit about my history, one might think so, but no, it's just not, and then we got into the topic of reparations, with that dialogue as well. But to me, what was funny, and this is what I didn't get to, was that, she has said that, the Trump campaign is about fear. And I just thought that was hilarious, because talk about the pot calling the kettle black. The hypocrisy from her on that is just ridiculous, when we've heard language from her, even in that interview, of if Trump wins, it'll be a bloodbath. Trump is a threat to democracy. He's dangerous, weak, and unfit to serve. You know what I mean? So, when we're talking about fear, who's using the fear tactic, I think we could argue that both of them might be, appealing to their base, and bringing up concerns of each, particular base. But what do you all think in terms of, the fear? Is it just Trump promoting fear, or are we seeing that also from her campaign?
I mean, they're competing against each other. So when I hear the argument that all she's talking about is Trump, I say, well, all he's primarily going to be talking about is her, because they're competing with each other. So to me, this is kind of part of the gamesmanship of it. I think there's a different tone when we talk about fear. I always use this to describe when people are talking about, like, if you watch CNN and you watch Fox, the tone is very different. I'm not saying that one is more credible than the other. I'm just saying that Fox has a very disdain and a talking down, and what I'm saying, there's a very attacking dynamic when they're referring to stuff that's reported on CNN, where a lot of stuff when on CNN, when they're talking about Fox, they're just like kind of shocked. They're like, I can't believe that they're doing this. I mean, the tone is different. So when you talk about fear, I don't believe in equality. I believe that if you have two things going on, one's going to be doing more than the other. I definitely think that, I don't know, because now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, I think that Trump is definitely leaning more into, it's going to be catastrophic because of what's going to play out, as opposed to it's going to be catastrophic because this guy is just going to continually make bad decisions. You know what I'm saying? I think there's an argument there that they're both kind of doing it just in a different way. But I mean, I definitely think that the Trump campaign definitely leans more into fear based on just sort of like platitudes, as opposed to, I would say that the Harris campaign, they seem like the fear that they're talking about is fear based on things that he's actually doing and saying. So you know what I'm saying? I don't think it's equivalent. But brother Afro Agnostics, what's your take on this?
Well, I agree with you. I think all politicians play on fear mongering, and that's always been a strategy. And I'm just kind of just thinking about it out loud. I think that with Kamala, her predictions, or her I don't know what you call it, her talk of some type of reprisal from Trump and Trump reporters. I think there is good evidence to believe that. I mean, just recently with the elections in Britain, where you had a coalition with the left and the mainstream liberals, there's been a lot of bloodshed and violence and rioting in the street. I think we would kind of be putting our hands under the covers if we didn't anticipate something similar happening here. And that happened because of the election of the opposition party, that the right-wing forces took the streets. So I think either way it goes, there's a possibility. I mean, when Kamala points to, when she does her fear mongering, she's pointing to January the 6th. She's pointing to actual, facts, things that have happened, as opposed to what Trump is saying.
Right. So to me, the irony, when we talk about this, this fear mongering, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Trump that has been tried? There's been 2 attempts on his life just within the last, few months, with him running for, this election. You know what I mean? So, and then again, the beauty about this election cycle is that we literally have an example, of each candidate having run the country already. So clearly, obviously, we had Trump running from 16 to 20, and then obviously recently, Biden and Harris, running the country, from 20 to now. Here in 24.
Why do you say that Trump ran it, and then you say Biden and Harris? You don't say Trump and Pence.
Is that because we all know what Pence, is, Trump is an alpha. Trump, was running the show. There was no doubt about it at all. Pence was there because, it's ceremonial to have a vice president. But in terms of being tasked with duties and whatnot, we just didn't really see that on Pence's watch. I mean, he can even, not certify the election, when there were some concerns that was brought up from Trump, going into, 2020, but here with Biden Harris, they're absolutely, the two were promoted as, being, in unity with one another, despite, the rhetoric that was that was spewed during the campaign between the two of them. She, even though there's been like this revisionist history taking place, she actually was the border czar until she wasn't, more recently, with the failures that take place on the border, so yeah, and that's why. And then also Pence didn't run for president, Kamala is, so that's why I frame it like that.
Well, I push back on it because, again, when you're a part of a team, you're going to defer to the boss. You're going to defer to the leader. You're not going to be outward literally promoting where you diverge and stuff on your policies and stuff like that. I don't know what was particularly going on behind the scenes. I'm not even going to speculate it. But the notion that you're going to stick another person, that they're just going to be the continuation of the other thing, to me, that defies logic, because you're going to have a completely different perspective. She was like someone, most of during the Biden presidency, people were talking about that she was nowhere to be seen. You know what I'm saying? People didn't have no concept of who she was. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like she really didn't have like a heavy voice or a heavy hand in what was going on, at least obviously blatantly. I'm just saying that, to me, this is gamesmanship. I'm not saying gamesmanship on your part. I believe you're extremely sincere, but I'm just talking about to make her, the continuation of Biden is ridiculous. When you have a coach and a coach gets fired and the assistant coach takes over and things completely change, of course that coach is going to play ball under the when you were the assistant coach, but now that you're in control, you're going to put your own flavor, you're going to put your own stank, you're going to put your own dynamics in. It's a completely different situation.
I think it's completely fair game because, again, look at how she came to the forefront. The way she came to the forefront was, there was a coup within the Democrat Party. They no longer believed that Biden was going to be able to beat Trump. They being the financial backers of the party, the donors, and the various leadership within the Democrats decided that he was not the best candidate even though he was voted, to represent that party by the people, and so then, as he was knew that his days were numbered, he then names Kamala, because of course she's tied to his legacy, names her to be, who he would recommend, and in him doing so, he really did it, in I don't know. Actually, I'll be speculating, but by him doing it, to me, is that by him making that decision, it was really to cement his legacy, versus having someone else, be put forth. And so when he did that, the Democrats got stuck with her at that point. And what I mean by stuck with her is, people just forget exactly, how Kamala was even being perceived, coming in, to this election cycle. She was mainly known as someone that was not, not present, not effective at all, and so then once she got named, then now, okay, you got to run with her, otherwise you might be called, a sexist. If you switch to someone else, you might be called a racist. If you switch to someone else, and so she literally was put there to be a continuation of what the Democrats do. And the thing about the Democrats that's different from Trump, because you got to remember, Trump is not even, a true Republican. He is actually not even aligned with the Republican mainstream at all, so he's more independent, as we look at, in terms of the type of candidate he is, Kamala is absolutely tied to the Democrat machine. So she's more what I call a Muppet or a puppet to continue to promote that which that administration, that the Democrat policies promote. So she's not her own free thinker. She's not coming up with things independently. She has, people that she is answering to, whereas with Trump, it is much different.
I mean, that is a bit of a presumption on your part, but you got some particular take on that, Afro agnostics?
No, but the whole, him, I think was a lot to be said. But him not perhaps for not sharing power in the same way Trump with his vice president as Biden did with his vice president. I think that just kind of shows that Trump doesn't share power, and Trump is a sort of has this dictatorial potential. I think that really just demonstrates that. But when I'm thinking about the interviews, both interviews, the interview with Fox News, who was the person?
Bret Baier.
Yeah, Bret Baier, and then the interview with Charlemagne. If you did a Venn diagram of the two interviews, what would be some contrasts and similarities? I think the big contrast for me is the softball questions that Charlemagne threw, and his his explicit and implicit consent and agreement just with everything she said. It was really, and then you had this live call in, felt like a plant, and then Izzo, Icewear Vezo. I mean, how did he get a mic? You know what I'm saying? He's from the east side of Detroit.
Was rambling. He was kind of rambling before he got his question out.
He's a drug pellet, like, okay, but somehow he has a mic and he has a question of concern. I think it's really orchestrated to make her look good, whereas the Fox, they were really trying to nail her to the cross. And I listened to the beginning of it, and a lot of it had to do with immigration and the border control and all this type of stuff that appealed to Trump's base, which appeals to white fragility and white people not being the majority anymore. And that's why a lot of people say that, he's a racist, because he appeals to racists. Kamala doesn't appeal to, I guess, that level of racism. Her racism is more sophisticated when she parrots the interests of the white ruling class, in my opinion.
Yeah, that was a perfect segue, because that's exactly where I was going next, was on the topic of border and immigration. And again, the way you all set me up is to be the defender of our white, fellow citizens. You know what I mean? But
welcome to the party, pal. I'm getting crucified on the show every week.
Right, but my thinking is just much different. You know what I mean? Like, I do agree that for sure, that whether it's conscious or subconscious, the fact that white people's representation in America is lessening. That is a concern, for some of them, for sure, not all of them, but definitely some of them, especially the more race conscious of them. But the majority of those people, as it is honestly with the majority of us who are not white, whether we be melanated, and representation of the various, class, creed and colors that are here. The main issue when it comes to immigration with us is security, and then, right after that, it will be dealing with the economy itself. But number one is security, and so, when I was watching, her talk about, that once again that, Trump, he made the Republicans not, sign off on the bill that was going to change everything for the Democrats and now make the border secure and whatnot. They couldn't be more full of it, because there were three things that Biden did when he came into office that reversed Trump's policies that he had in place, ones that he did not need to go to the Congress, to do, but, that these three things were essential in what made immigrants, illegal immigrants that were crossing over had to slow their roll were, one, the building of the wall. Under Biden, that was shut down. The building of the walls to a degree work. Where I'm not in agreement with is it looks like that now it's going to be more of a virtual wall, where digital IDs are going to come and play. That's a whole nother topic. But halting of that wall definitely had a influence over what was taking place in regards to immigration. Number two, the reinstated the catch and release. Under catch and release, that was a major deterrent for illegal immigrants to come here, at all, and so when that was, shut down, then, again, that gave a green light, as did, literally Democrats announcing, that, hey, come on back, we need you, that was something that was a pillar of, again, this crisis that we have. And number three, he pulled out, of the Remain in Mexico agreement. So those three things, again, did not need congressional approval. If he just reversed Biden and Harris administration, reversed their position on those three items, that alone would have slowed things down. Instead, what we got with the bill was all sorts of pork that was added into it, from funding Ukraine, funding Israel, and all sorts of other, type of topics, but mainly those things was all mixed up into it, and that is why the Republicans ultimately shut that down, but again, Kamala, it was widely known. Now she wasn't actually called the border czar. That was what some of the headlines, in particular from right wing, media stations and pundits, what they used on her. But it was widely known at that time that Kamala's role was going to be focused on the border. And it wasn't until recently, until she ran for president, not ran for president, but was selected to be in Biden's place, that all changed, so she was and is, supposed to be the one that was heading up that program. Of course, Biden, he has to be accountable for it, but those three things would change the reality of the crisis that is coming, that has been here in America for a long time now.
So let me push back on a few of those things. So you talk about, I'm glad that you have conceded, or at least put it out there, that, again, that wasn't an official title, that was a moniker. But what is being ignored is that many times they pushed back in the past, not just recently, not just because she was running for a president, because that really wasn't her job. The Republicans literally impeached the guy that was actually in control of that stuff. They didn't impeach her, they impeached him. So that was not her position. Her position was actually very, very clear.
Are you talking about Mayorkas?
I believe that was the name of the person. Exactly. I may not remember specifically the name. I just remember the person who was actually in charge of the border, and that was the person that they were going after and impeaching. So I'm just saying, this border czar thing was something that we all heard, something that I believe too, but it's because that was what was being presented to us. They pushed back on it immediately. They never accepted that. They've always clarified that that wasn't their job. That's a whole nother issue. But when you talk about the pork, when you talk about the support for Ukraine, the support for Israel, they agreed to that anyways. So they agreed to that without getting the thing that they really wanted. So you're saying that
not Ukraine, Israel, of course, that's a blanket, But
Ukraine, there was a bill that they passed afterwards that included support for Israel and Ukraine, and that's why Marjorie Greene Taylor said we look like fools. We blew up that border thing because we were talking about pork, and now we basically just gave into the pork all by itself. So I'm just saying that flies in the face of that. I mean, we understand that, there was a political thing that happened. And the political thing was based on not giving the Democrats a win. And honestly, it didn't have to be a Democrat win. If the Republican was really pushing it, he should have been like, look, this was a step to fixing a problem they messed up. That you can make all the great arguments of fact that their programs got soft on border, and that's why you had that super influx. It got way out of control. The Democrats completely mismanaged that. I'm gonna say it again. The Democrats completely mismanaged that, but they worked out and hammered out a deal that, again, Kamala Harris said, look, This problem existed before Trump. This problem existed. It transcended Trump. Trump may have had some policies that may have stemmed some things, but it really didn't deal with the actual problem. You're talking about symptoms versus problems. This bill dealt with problems, and he torpedoed it for political gain. So, I mean, you can disagree with that, but I'm just saying that's the reality of what happened.
Yeah, well, no, I definitely, I disagree with it, that position. Not that he torpedoed it. He definitely did not believe, as well as other Republicans, even some Democrats, did not necessarily believe what that bill had in it as being the solution.
They agreed until they got the phone call. They agreed. They agreed to it. And the part they had the numbers, they had the support. He made the phone call, and then it blew up. He was the X factor.
Yeah. Like I said, and I think personally, from just the knowledge I have on things, he was right. In that, again, the Republicans were interested in solving the problem, or at least we're putting it back to where it was, to where they had people that were traveling, that were embedded with migrants, making their voyage here to America. And the interviewers were asking people, who do they prefer, to be president of the United States? Not one of them said Trump. They all said Biden. Because again, his policies were a lot more lax and a lot more, forgiving in terms of allowing them, to come here again, not through legal means, which allowed not just, it wasn't just, Hispanics, it was everybody, including, what we now know to be, and which we've been saying, those of us that, study geopolitics and security for this nation, is that terrorists absolutely, were making their way through here as well as, cartel members, drug dealers, weapon, dealers, the whole 9 yards, or arms traffickers rather, the whole 9 yards was getting through, this, the way Democrats had things set up, And so again, the people who fumbled the situation so horribly now has a solution to solve it. No one believed that, and Trump most assuredly didn't believe it. And so here we are,
So I have a question. This is for both of you all and the audience. Why is the border, why is that even an issue or a social issue that's, being discussed to the degree that it's being discussed? How has that gotten conflated with security? And why is building a strong border somehow?
That's really easy.
Cure that we refer to.
Yeah, that's really easy. Like I said, I just mentioned the fact that, through the borders being wide open, we have literally let terrorists come into this nation, those that, are not, friendly, to the American government, which I understand. We have grievances with the American government, But again, when you have agents, and soldiers from other countries coming here to set up shop for whatever, they're planning on doing, that's not a good thing, because many of us and our people could be harmed, as well as other innocents could be harmed in those type of efforts. And then when you talk about, like, how does it impact so-called Black people, in particular, bro, like when you look at the streets, and the weapons that are in the hands of some of our ignorant brothers in particular, and, the drugs, that are going rampant, through our community, and the harm they're causing, not only from the harm they're doing to the addicts, that are engaged with taking them, but the violence that, ensues around, said dealings, is something that, is bad, for us, and then on top of that,
wouldn't you agree? But hold on, wouldn't you agree that most of the, I hate to say terrorists because terrorism is just a tactic or a strategy, but say that people who have been accused of terrorists, of carrying out terroristic acts domestically within the United States, haven't most of those people been white males, people that are citizens, that are raised and born in the United States? Have they been foreign people? Have they been people that are recent immigrants or any of that?
No, I would say no. I would say no. And the reason why I would say no is because, again, it depends on how you define terrorists. If you define like a white boy in Buffalo going up, shooting up a grocery store that had a lot of our people there as being a terrorist act. You know what I mean? That okay, yes, that's example white
How would that
white
not
terrorism.
be? How would that not be? That's the definition of terrorism.
Well, look. So what you call terrorism, I also call terrorism of the inner city violence that's taking place in ghettos throughout America, if you will. These impoverished areas and whatnot. Where a lot of us reside, and the killings that go and take place in these areas throughout the nation. I consider that to be terrorism. We're going to label that terrorism. You know what I mean? Is it not creating terror? Is not death and carnage a byproduct? You know what I mean? So again, we could use
wouldn't that be more of a history of gun control than border control?
No, to me that would be more of a history, of actually, education. You know what I mean? And manhood, because in these same communities, if we had more men who were present and had influence, and then were accountable, for their well-being and their families and their children, then we would have less of that. You see what I'm saying? With me, I'm always going to go back to accountability. And I know that in our community, that's not a very popular word, whether it's among our sisters, sometimes our brothers. I'm about more of that accountability. You know what I mean? And so, again, I
got issue with that though. Okay, hold on. But I'm going to get back to that. But so let me give my perspective, and I'd like to hear your feedback and criticism of my perspective.
Yes, sir.
So I think that when I think of security, I think of a social safety net. I think of universal income. I think of universal housing, universal health care, education. Putting more money into those things, those social programs, which are most Trump supporters and Trump himself, they want to roll back the gains of the Great Society. They want to roll back the gains of the New Deal. They really want to take those gains away. So when I think of security, I don't think of a border. I think that's more of a white fear, and fear of being of no longer being the majority. Because we can't dismiss the history that as the United States expanded from the 13 colonies, one of the criteria for I forget what they called them, an unorganized territory or something at that time. In order for them to be incorporated as a state, they had to have a white majority. And that's the reason why Puerto Rico or Guam has never become yet a state. Hawaii was kind of like the only exception to that rule in a certain fact. So we can't discount the fact that white people, they have benefited. If you read on the Constitution, the winners are the majority. So they understand that being the majority, it gives them political wins in so many areas, white people in comparison to other peoples here. But anyway, you don't see those issues as being more important or being more, related to security than the border. Why is that like the number one issue for you in terms of security?
Yeah, and so sure.
I'm not saying that it is, but that's what
well, no, sure. So I understand. Since you and I have been part of some of the same organizations, I absolutely understand your point of view, and my point is absolutely not to dismiss that or diminish your argument. Because there has been injustice. You'll never find me argue that we haven't faced injustice, but like you just mentioned. We were not the winners. We were not organized to a point to where we had more of a majority. And when these acts were taking place, we did not prevail. At the end of the day, So now we have to look at the construct that we have today, and then how do we move forward as a people? And the one thing that when I look at security, that unfortunately the masses of our people have not embraced is we haven't embraced unity. So again, I always go and fall back on accountability. So if we're going to, get those things, there's a prerequisite of not going to the table begging for people who did you wrong to now do right by you. Because what is the likelihood of that happening? You know what I mean? I remember the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught, and I know this being a nation, that if a man don't treat you right, what makes you think that he'll teach you right? You see what I'm saying? So it's all going to go back to, us at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So if that's something we want, there's something that we have to do. You see what I'm saying? To get that. So again, but taking it back to where things are, what the reality of it is that, the elites, many of whom are, not black, not melanated, some of whom are in power in the system that we're existing under right now today is capitalism, and the majority of the people in this country, that's not something, that they're gravitating, towards changing. You know what I mean? So, it's going to come back to us looking at, okay, well, what's the reality that we're dealing with right now? The reality is that we have other nations that literally have released their criminals, their murderers, their killers, their rapists, those that have, mental illness and whatnot out of their systems, that allow them to flood here into America, to say, okay, America, you all deal with them. Now, it's not everybody. Let me say that. I know, and have people who are close to me who are not documented, whom I love. You know what I mean? I say it again, undocumented people, who are close to me, whom I love. You see what I'm saying? So, I have a card on the table and how things go, you know what I mean, and the rhetoric that's going on. But again, taking emotion out of it, which I think is like a real attribute of manhood, is not, we're not going to act emotional, we're going to act rational. You know what I mean? And when I take all that out of it, I can't ignore the fact that there is this element that has come in, and I'm not getting there, let me go ahead and say it, there's human traffickers, child trafficking, the prostitution, that's taking place. This is all a reality that is here and now based on, this open border policy that the Democrats have allowed, to go to this extreme. Go ahead, my brother Nice.
I want to say Afro agnostics. Brother, you've blown my mind. I never even framed it that way. I see a completely different argument now, because the majority of the crime, the majority of the terrorism in this country is not coming from, people crossing the border.
In fact, it's being exported across the border through United States foreign policy. And that's the reason why you see these trickles of people coming in, because United States foreign policy takes away resources. So all they're doing is following their resources that the United States is monopolizing. United States intervention in South America goes back all the way to the 19th century. So, if your main concern is security, there's other ways, like maybe some form of reparations to those countries that the United States has, like, for instance, Allende in Chile. They ousted him, put in the right-wing dictator. They've done that all over South America. They have financed the right-wing party against the left party under the framework of, we have to protect, stop communism or contain communism or socialism. And, really, if you were to just give more resources to those countries, then the people wouldn't come, because they're only coming because of the resources. They're not fascinated. Part of the white ego, they think that, they're just fascinated with our freedom. They don't care about freedom, or they care about money and resources. If you give more money and resources to those countries, you're going to stop the flow of immigration. But, this whole border thing and stuff like that, you're just trying to hoard the resources while ripping apart these countries abroad at the same time. Something has to give.
Yeah, no. Again, I can understand where you're coming from, but we got to break it down. Is a lot of those activities that you're describing is not just American foreign policy. This is the very thing that Trump ran on, which was his wanting to dismantle what we call and what is called the deep state, the shadow government, these unelected, officials that are in place once presidents have come and gone, that continue policies against, various nations and whatnot that is not to their benefit and really not even to the American people's benefit. You see what I'm saying? So there is an element that's here that needs to be dismantled.
I think the history of the United States says something different. How can I sum this up really quick? So when the United States, when they successfully won the war against Britain, the 13 colonies were 13 separate countries, according to what they signed the Treaty of Paris. But they also laid claim, a part of the agreement, to the Northwest Territory that included, Illinois, which Indiana, which is called Indian country. That's where the word comes from, Indiana, Minnesota, Michigan, and all these other states that have been formed from that territory. It was called the Northwest Territory. So, at that time, that was separate from the United States, but it was something that the United States had imperialistic claims over. So just from the very from the very start, the United States was a settler empire, and they've always been involved in military campaigns outside of the jurisdiction of the United States. So when the frontier closed on the West Coast in the early 1900s, that continued, to Cuba, to Puerto Rico, to Guam, to the Philippines. So there's been this constant interference from the United States for centuries.
But we're not disagreeing, brother. We're not disagreeing. There's no disagreement. I acknowledge that.
I'm saying you can't separate that from the border problem, though.
Well, no, you can. I would say you can, because, again, there is today the people, right? Who are the people today of the United States is not just white men. Back then, that's what it was when the Constitution was formed. That's what it applied to. Since then, now we have women. Now we have all different sort of ethnicities that are now part of the people. So now when you look at, what the people want and desire, many of the people, they're most of the time left in the dark in terms of what is being done in their name. You see what I'm saying? Once they become enlightened, if they even want to become enlightened, then you see the disconnect between how they feel about what their government is doing, abroad, and domestically, quite frankly, versus, what they would like to see done. So there is a separation from the people and the government, but even inside the government, there's this element that exists that, again, that is unelected, to where they're not accountable to the people. You see, our politicians that we have, they're accountable, but then the way the system is set up is they come and go every 4 to 8 years. You see what I'm saying? And so you see what I'm saying? So again, we're talking about accountability. So again, that deep state element, that shadow government. These are the individuals. These are the institutions that have continued these policies. You got to remember, many of the people now who are here, they're from some of these nations, who did not benefit from these policies and are being harmed right now. We have Palestinian Americans in America right now. We have all sorts of people throughout, Africa, as well as, South America, here right now, that were destabilized, by, various type of labor movements or organizations.
Yes, it is. Come on. If there was a way to boost and increase the security within the United States without making a border, would you be down? Would you support that?
Yeah, sure. I would, but like I said, so I don't disagree. So the things that you're saying, bro, I would love for, again, this reparations. Remember earlier I said that I'm for reparations. I'm for reparations for all, not just exclusively just for Black people. We'll never get it that way. But we made this about workers' rights, and labor, and now is a more universal approach, to make sure that there is this economic type of security, this food security, things of that nature. Then I would see it absolutely. Not only would the people benefit here in America, but then this new shift in policy, would actually benefit those from abroad. But again, in order to get there to that point that you're describing, is something that we have to do. It has to be a bottom-up movement that takes place to where now we're able to gain a grip, from those who have it. And even then, they're not going to just give it to you. You know what I mean? That in a perfect world, it could be set up real nice to where it could be a bloodless transition. You know what I mean? But that would take tremendous unity, tremendous organizing. And the only person that I know of that is talking about such right now happens to be running for president. He's an Indian, and someone who knows about, slavery, because, the Indians, they were among the first slaves, that existed, but Dr. Shiva, Ira Dure, I always kind of butcher his name a little bit, but he's running for president. He speaks and is organizing and teaching a systems approach on how you actually build that type of momentum to make these changes, and he doesn't believe, nor do I, that Trump represents that change. Now Kamala represents that change. That's why, even though you hear me, lie and speak, it's seemingly like I'm in agreement with Trump, about I am with some things for sure, but my position is what it has been since I voted for Obama the first term. I went against my own thinking. I was with Cynthia McKinney. During that campaign, but I changed my vote from that Green Party, Cynthia McKinney, to Obama, mainly because Minister Farrakhan was like, hey, I'm voting for him. And I was like, man, do I really want my vote to be a protest vote? And do I want to just help to get this brother in position so we can at least see what he could do? And so I went ahead, changed it, and vote for him, in that election. I was so disappointed in what I saw, that I haven't voted for a president since. You know what I'm saying? Not since, So again, we agree with much more than we disagree. But but given the choices that we have right now, we really have three choices: either A, support Kamala, support Trump, or C, abstain or vote for one of these third-party candidates and whatnot, and throw our weight behind them in hopes that now we can move and try to push forward a third party, later on, to me, the fourth option, I guess, would be to really fall in line with Dr. Shiva, who's not the leader per se, but the brother is really brilliant and sharing a systems approach, which is something that has not been taught to us in high school and not really even college, so that the people can properly organize, is to put our weight behind something like that to where we could get to, this reality that you would like to see, in terms of equity.
Y'all two are in Cali, justice, right? Equality. Y'all two are in Cali, right?
Correct. Oh, he's in North California, I believe, and I'm in.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm in Sacramento. I'm over here in the state capital. Yeah, yes, sir.
It don't matter. Yeah, Trump ain't winning Cali.
Yeah, that's what I tell people.
Trump's not winning Cali. He's not winning Cali, but now there has been more headway that he's made here this election cycle than ever. I can tell you that much right now. But now he's definitely not winning in Cali.
We're not going to have this debate, but I want to have this debate. I've always said that the Electoral College diminishes my vote.
This time Trump might win the popular vote.
It takes away the power. It takes away the power of my vote. It creates my vote is less than one, whereas someone in Georgia, I salute to you, brother, Afro-agnostics, or someone in Pennsylvania, or some person in the swing state, their vote is elevated beyond one. You know what I'm saying? So
that's benefited us as a people because we have been the so-called minority, and you got to remember, America is not a democracy; it's a republic.
I get that. It may have benefited. It may have been a tool to get us to where we're at, but it diminishes the voice of the people presently right now. If we're a democracy, it should be what the people. The fact that you live in this region and that region, it shouldn't come down to that. People in regions have way more power than people in other regions, even though you may have way more numbers over here. To me, it diminishes your individual vote.
This is a balance, bro. This is a balance. To me, the most thing that really diminishes our value, our voice, is the inordinate amount of money that's in the politics, into these campaigns. That's what's really negatively impacting the people the most. Is that money. Because clearly those that have the money have a lot of influence in terms of what's being promoted to us through the airways, and exposed to the mass of us. And because many of us, those that do work, you have to really research to really find out what is the reality, wherever the position is, that you support. Because something might be framed like in a language that sounds like it'll be something you support, but until you dig into it, you might find out it's the exact opposite. It was, during that Bush campaign, when he had Karl Rove as his political analyst, and head of his campaign, that they really instituted some really, clever strategies, that, really misled a lot of people. And we just seen it grow, on both sides of the aisles, since then. But again, the people who have America is not the American people. It is these interests, these corporate interests in particular, those with a lot of money and influence, and these unelected officials. And we need to break that up. And I guarantee you that Kamala is not the person that is even going to do that. She don't even claim that she's going to do that. The only person that has been doing it, to a degree, and is talking about doing it is Trump. It's the only one. So to me, it's like, sometimes you need, the snake, the attack and get in a fight with the other snake. And maybe they both die, at the end of the day, so to speak. I'm not, again, I'm not wishing ill will or trying to, inspire, someone to, to do some illegal act, and try to assassinate somebody. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that, that I don't agree really with any of these representatives that we have out right now in the mainstream, but again, gun to my head, I had to pick one or the other. It's going to be Trump, namely, not because he's a white man. I just have this slave mentality where, I want to trust a white man over a sister. It's not because of that. It's not because he's a man, she's a woman. It's because when I look at the policies that, Trump is supporting and what it means to the security, if you will, the actual security from, even if those that have grievances with this country and this government, I get it, but at the same time, I'm not endorsing nor want to see. And if I see someone, and observe someone that is trying to harm innocent people for political purposes or whatnot, then I'm going to be the first one to speak up, is I don't want to have that in our country where myself, family, friends, loved ones can be harmed. I don't want that. I most assuredly don't want to do and have things present to where it's going to increase the violence on the street, the access to illegal firearms. Gun control is not the problem. If anything, we need more guns, to law-abiding citizens, but, because when you look at what the criminals have, they don't care about the law. They are armed better than private citizens are, namely because some of the weapons that private citizens, especially here in Cali, that we're precluded from owning, again, the criminals have it because they don't obey the law. You see what I'm saying? So we're already
criminals don't want to draw heat to themselves.
Maybe they want to draw heat to themselves. Their whole existence is about
no, because they prefer to work in the shadows. I'm just saying that's just not the nature of it. They, people do get caught up in their shootings and stuff like that. As far as innocents getting stray bullets and stuff like that. They're not the most tactical. They're not the most responsible. But
nor do they care.
But no, they do care because again, it's fundamental to their hustle that heat not be brought onto them, that the cops don't get worked up and stuff like that. They're not the ones that are usually doing the mass killings and stuff. The mass killings are civilians that are not necessarily a part of these particular things that have a bad day or that want to make some big egregious political statement or whatever and stuff like that. Those are the people that are doing the mass shootings, not just regular.
Those are few and far in between, But what happens every day inside of an inner city in America is violence, bro, killings. People getting shot every single day, bro. Los Angeles,
and that's
Chicago,
criminal on criminal violence.
Wherever you want to name.
That's criminal. That's soldier on soldier violence. Criminal on criminal violence.
But that soldier violence impacts the community negatively. Including having innocent civilians being harmed as well. So like I said, I just it's still a problem, and I don't want to see things happening that could be prevented, by slowing down the flow of access through these borders and whatnot. We could do that, then we should do it. So again, that's why I really support.
When we're talking about gun control, we're not talking about that crime. We're talking about the one that I'm talking about. We're talking about the civilian having a bad day. The thing that motivates the whole discussion of gun control is not what gangsters are doing, in the hood. It's what it's breakdown dudes that are doing what they're doing, shooting up a grocery store, this people or that people. That's what the thing is.
Robbing, we're talking about all that, brother.
But,
If you
go
can
ahead.
take all
I didn't mean to jump in front of you. Agnes, you were gonna. I want you to lose your point. What were you about to say?
No, so much. I don't know where to begin, but I don't know. You started on the gun control. I'm a big gun advocate, but I question the resistance to gun control, and I think the statistics bear out, a different story, somewhat, and there's a lot of paranoia about the need for a gun, and I think violence also takes on many different forms in the community, and this we tend to isolate the Black community in particular, but the white community is equally as violent as the Black community. So the earliest statistics around homicide, Black people, of course, have a higher instances of homicide than their white counterparts. But what they do is they disconnect homicide from suicide, because on the other hand, Black people have less suicide rates than their white counterparts. But when you add up suicide and homicide, the end result is what? Both death. White people and Black people are equal in terms of the violence committed in our respective communities. And I think just even going back to so many things have been said, but I'll just rest right there. I mean, I want to say so much, but.
Well, we don't have the time constraints that we have with Focus Up. I mean, we often go to like an hour and a half. So I'm saying, I don't know how long you have to participate, but I'm just saying that if you got something to say, you got the floor to say it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So,
I mean, you had okay. Then you mentioned. I'm losing my train of thought. What you said earlier, the gun control, the community. And I was you said something about in our community, we don't have the unity. And I think that's a false perspective. I think that's rooted in just mythology. I think Black people are the most politically unified group in the United States, hands down. And I think there's tons of what metric are we using to demonstrate unity? My simple understanding is working together to get things done. As a community, groups working together, and I think there's no other group that best demonstrates that than Black people. Even if you just merely look at in terms of electoral politics, every group in the United States is split almost down the line: Democrats, Republicans. Black people are the vast majority, 90-something%, are Democrats, but it has nothing to do with the Democratic Party per se, because we were, the majority for the Republicans as well. It just shows that's just one example of our political unity. When we throw our weight behind the party, we throw our entire weight. We are very unified in terms of electoral politics than any other group in the United States. So, I kind of reject that notion and the notion of this absence of manhood or this deficiency to be in unity. It all kind of points towards a deficiency model within Black people. And that should not be the focus. The focus is white supremacy. The focus is capitalism. We try to point the finger at everything but the main cause of the issue. And I don't see how supporting Trump or Kamala can, really advance our interests. Strategically, we may want to support Kamala for certain reasons, but she's not going to advance our interests either. She will just buy us time so that we can have the time to organize to do what you pointed out earlier, Student X, to advance our interests.
And the brother Yusuf was on here. He always talks. It's funny. You said bide us time. He talks about how Trump is going to bide us time from World War III.
Correct.
So it was very interesting that both of you guys had that tact on it.
Correct.
I adamantly disagree with that. For the world wars, I mean, you have to have another competing power. I mean, you can technically say that might be China right now. But the problem with the wars was a problem of imperialism. Those were imperialist wars. Those were wars over territory between imperialist powers. The rest of the world got thrown into it because the rest of the world was under the dominion of imperialist powers. So imperialism is the cause of these of World War I and World War II.
So let me just address some of what the brother has said, and first of all, I love this dialogue. And Afro acknowledges, man, this is a very a wise brother, and I know where he's rooted at is in love for the people. You know what I mean? So I, of course, I can't help but
with you, brother. Yeah.
You say again?
No, I'm saying likewise. Again,
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I appreciate that, brother. But now the one area where I would say that that we definitely have a disagreement with is I'm gonna say it again. I am the accountability dude. When I say accountability dude, you're not gonna see me point to capitalism. You're not gonna see me point to racism. You're not gonna see me point to anything other than self. You know what I mean? As being the problem for the lack of manifestation of anything that I desire. It's only gonna be me. You know what I mean? It's my fault. You know what I'm saying? And so when I start with that, now it forces me to look within and see what I need to do in order to change the reality that is facing me. You know what I mean? And so when you mention unity, is that you made it, you talked about political, and sure, without a doubt, man, we vote. It's more like 95%. Our sisters voted a 95% clip, for Biden this last election. You know what I mean? Without doubt. Oh, brother Yusuf here. Without a doubt. You know what I mean? So it was so. But even then, is that really unity, or is that more ignorance? You know what I mean? We just vote to stay with a party that really has not been doing and putting forth any of our needs. You know what I mean? And anything that would be a substance that will lift us up and change our condition. We've been voting Democrat for over 60 years now. You know what I mean? To where that's where our vote has been. If you look at the state of our community now, look at Baltimore. I do a lot of travel. Look at Baltimore.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Can you elaborate?
So let me finish this point, and then I'll throw it back to you. Okay. So even the political unity, we're not totally in agreement with in terms of, other than the fact that yes, the majority of our people vote Democrat, but then how about unity within the family? I think I saw a comment that briefly came across my screen that brother Yusuf had put up. I talked about the divorce rate. There we go. Divorce rate. You know what I mean? How about fatherless homes? You know what I mean? When we start looking at the breakup of the family, lack of unity in the family, that's the whole byproduct, and the whole foundation of civilization. You know what I mean? High civilization. So the fact that we're not unified there, that's a problem. And then it has a direct relation to the economic unity that we lack. You know what I mean? One of the best policies I ever heard promoted was when it was Minister Farrakhan. He said that if we could get black people, if you just take those of us who work, it's something like 20 million of us, right? Who work. If you could just get us to just $1 a month, put into a fund to where we elect and have some people that control that fund, and to where they have to agree to a blood oath, meaning that if they did something to not be truthful and honest to the people, and then betray the people, on their oath and serving the people correctly with these resources, that they would have to agree to take their own life. You know what I mean? But we put together that it did something where we put $1 a month to a fund. It would start at 20 million in 1 month, and then 40 million. He said by the end of the day, there's not none of the challenges that we have in terms of economic, the needs that we have that couldn't be addressed, including education, because we could have all of our children, go to a historically black college, and not just get some of these little silly degrees like in athletics and theater, but high science, mathematics, things of that nature, and come away with an education to where they don't owe a penny towards. The only thing they have to do is go serve the community. We could change our condition in a short period of time, but again, we don't even have that unity. You know what I mean? So
let me just say initially, I didn't say I thought that you might mention our ignorant commitment or however it's framed to the Democratic Party, but it's not the Democratic Party because prior to that, it was 95%, probably 99, 100% the Republican Party.
Sure.
And now there's an obvious reason Black people were politically committed to the Republican Party. That was they did represent our interests, during leading up to postbellum times. And, moving forward, they did represent our best interests.
We have more conservative values then too.
But in the 60s, I'm sorry, what did you say, brother?
We have more conservative values then too, versus the liberal values that the masses of our people have adopted now.
I disagree with that because I think the radical Republicans are what caused us to really support the Republican Party. And you had mentioned, like earlier, the Constitution and things like that.
Can you elaborate on that?
Represent what? You said what?
You mentioned the radical Republicans.
Yeah, the radical Republicans were the Republicans in the Republican Party who were abolitionists, and they were the left wing of the Republican Party at that time, and they were pushing for radical reform such as like land redistribution in the form of 40 acres and a mule. That was radical Republicans pushing that. So our commitment was, as a party, we're very unified behind whoever it is we support, and we support them with information. Now, I agree, the Democratic Party, as of late, they haven't earned that type of commitment from us. I agree, but there's a reason why. I think it's been shown statistically that Democrats have added 50. I think they went back
50 to 1.
Yeah, 50 to 1. It's obvious. I mean, Democrats, every party is beholden to the donor party, to the white working class. But the Republicans are more so for the poor, for the Black, than in contrast with the Republicans. I mean, when LBJ said we shall overcome, that he was given an endorsement to the civil rights movement. That was major in 1964. A lot of Black people started going over. And it wasn't just that. It was the white people who started leaving the Democratic Party, going into the Republican Party with the guy who ran against Nixon, Barry Goldwater. So the white supremacy influx into the Republican Party also added to why Black people left the Republican Party. So it's very politically logical.
Refer to this thing as the Southern switch.
Man, there's no such thing as no switch, man. What they done was switch the tactic, man. That's all it is. Get niggas on their side. I don't understand why y'all brothers can't see the game for what it really is. Y'all trying to put all this madness on it, like Goldwater, Barry Goldwater. Understand who he is. Understand the name. Understand the tactic. Their mission was to destroy the Black man from the beginning, no matter what party, right? You made a statement earlier that Kamala Harris is going to buy us more time. Tell me how she going to buy us more time when she's funding the wars. When not she, I'm not going to say her, let's say Joe Biden and his administration is funding the war. So how's that buying us more time when Donald Trump is actually saying, man, I'm not giving up no money, no wars. That's what you call buying time.
No,
you can't keep pushing someone expecting that you buying time. You have to look at what China, Russia, and India is doing right now, and not only India, but Iran is doing right now. They are united against the dollar to de-dollarize the dollar, right, globally, right? So how is that buying us more time? Trump said, listen, man, I got to tighten this thing up. I will charge 100% tariffs if this happened. Trying to put fear back in them. But me personally, I don't believe it's going to work.
Okay, as far as the statement you made around the war, Both
Mhm.
candidates are going to continue every single war right now. That's
Who?
the
Without
Kamala.
American help, they can't do it without American help.
Wait. No. I think he's 100% right about Israel. I don't know if that's the case about Ukraine.
Okay.
No. Israel cannot do it. Listen, you heard what's going on with France and Macron, right? In Israel, right? You heard what the G7 is saying about Israel, right? They're not getting finance. You know who's the only one's financing this war with Israel? Is America. So if America pull back those dollars, pull back those weapons, Israel will lose. Donald Trump has stated,
No doubt. But the question
Donald
that
Trump has stated in the side of an interview, he has stated, he said, man, let Israel fight to the end. We ain't got nothing to do with it.
okay, but I'm saying that the United States policy since even before 1948 has been support for Israel, no matter what party is in office.
I agree.
And the United
I
States
agree.
policy has been imperialistic across the world since the very beginning, no matter
I agree.
who is in office. And I'm saying Trump, Kamala, Biden, Obama, Clinton, they're all going to continue this war effort. They're not going to start taking down the military, the 800 and something military bases around the world. You can't, Ukraine, they may, start to finance that war through the back door like they're doing now, but no troops on the ground. I get that, but
what is no troops on the ground, my brother? Tell me what troops we talking about? American troops?
Yeah, United States troops on the ground.
American troops is on the ground in Ukraine. American troops is on the ground in Israel right now.
No, that's
I
what
got family members. I got people that's there.
I'm saying they may not have troops on the ground, but what I'm
No,
saying
they
is
got troops on the ground commanding.
I'm saying under, say for instance, I'm giving an example under Trump, there may not be any more troops on the ground, but they're going to continue to finance the war.
No, they ain't
indirectly. That's all I'm saying.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Now, yeah, I'm just saying whatever is in the United States, the interest of the ruling class, that's the political parties are tools of the white ruling class. So it doesn't matter who they are to the extent that they serve and advance that interest. Then you have mentioned the family, as the divorce rate and things of that nature. The white families have a high divorce rate too, all across the board. It's a horizontal issue. Divorce.
What do that have to do with our unity?
Listen, when you isolate and point us out as if there's something specifically wrong or deficient with us, other than capitalism.
It is the Democratic Party and their liberal views is wrong with us.
Brother, let me talk. So systems of oppression, that should be our focus, not this looking within as me as an individual or looking at my family, trying to see what's wrong with my family. No, the system is deficient. Let's focus our interest on that. And this whole notion of circulating our black dollar, you talking about accountability, start to do the accounting on that type of money and what it will really take. We don't have the money. We don't have the liquid income to do the things that you're saying.
Wait. You know what? Let me.
At the same time, they're taking our tax dollars and then financing education. We talking about getting our own education. No, you might want to come with a policy where black people don't have to pay taxes, or our tax monies are given back to us or to our community. But no,
Trump proposed that, and Trump proposed that.
You said what?
Trump proposed that to our community. He said, "Let's take if your child is not being taught in the school or the school district that they are in, take them tax dollars and allow him to go or her to go any school district that they want without any penalties." Huh?
Say one of the problems with that is that in those white schools, those have been very popular suburban movements for white people. Like for instance, in Oakland, where
it necessarily don't got to be white. Islam got schools. There's charter schools everywhere.
Hey, brother Yusuf, let him finish this point.
It's it's 40% black. 40% white, but you don't find white people in any of the Oakland public schools because they're putting their children in private schools, and many of them are advocating to have their monies for taxes that will go to education given to those families themselves, so other white people can congregate and they can open up their own white schools and so forth. But can we benefit from some of that too? Yeah, but that's tax dollars. That's not our own individual dollars that we don't have disposable or miscellaneous income to do the things that you said. There's like this whole blown up thing about Tulsa, and Tulsa was independent. No, 98% of the inhabitants of Tulsa, Oklahoma work for white people. That was a small business district. They did not have the capacity to employ even 3% of the Black community. Black people are poor. We don't have the disposable income, the wealth to do the things that you say, independent of taking back our tax dollars, our resources from the government that rape us of our resources. We need to
$1 a month
resources back and redistribute them that way.
The example I gave earlier was $1 a month. You know, if you look at how we're spending our money, then if that was redirected from alcohol, drugs, you know what
I'm saying? We act like we're diverting our money from not helping ourselves. We're diverting to alcohol. We buy alcohol consumption. In fact, white people buy more drugs than we do. They use more drugs.
Again, but I'm not talking about them, brother. I'm talking about us. You know, if you look at how we spend our money.
Why are we expected to do something that no other people have done?
But because you
don't
just
buy no alcohol no more. I like alcohol. Why can't
the reason why is because. Yeah, so the reason why I'm saying is because we're in this conditioning that you're mentioning. You know what I mean? We have a lack thereof of certain realities, and so if we're going to again change that reality, that's something we have to do.
We're not magical. We're not superhuman. We're not going to do anything extraordinary that other people have not done. What we can done, the history of what we've done is organize, make demands on the system, and deconstruct the system. That's something that we can do.
And let me talk about
you do that and you deconstruct the system through political awareness and political understanding. So if we want to continue to go down the same path, if we continue to want to go down the same path, we keep voting the same way. If we want to cause some disruptions, if we want to cause disruptions in the system, you put in their adversaries, allow them to fight. Like Brother Charles said earlier today, I believe on the last podcast you guys just did, allow the snake to eat the snake.
I like that.
If they hate Trump so much, put Trump in office and allow them to eat one another. That is the black man's strategies. That's our chess move. But we want to continue to say, hey, put tampons in our bathrooms. Go ahead and continue to have these children to be transgender. Go ahead and allow us to go ahead and allow us to be who we are as an individual with no unity. Continue the divorce rate, giving women more power over the black man. Then keep voting the way we're going to see where we end up. But we want to cause disruption and say we want to stop it. You put your chess piece in, and that chess piece for the black man is Donald Trump.
So you said tampon. I know you want to say something about that.
No, I didn't want to. We can go there, but I just want to say first what I agree with what Brother Youssef said. Now, when I was talking about voting for Kamala to buy us time, I don't even know if I was sure I was advocating or saying that for myself, but many people do. Now, as far as like voting for Trump as a strategy, again, I look at electoral politics as a strategy, like you said, it's a chess move. But I'm not, I don't believe in any of the candidates or any of the parties as, as a salvation.
I agree.
That's why I emphasize social.
Yeah, we all agree on that point.
That's why he said social movements are going to be more impactful than political maneuvering. That's why I kept emphasizing. That's what I heard you say. That was my understanding.
But he already explained it that we're not coming together. Even in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we couldn't do it. So therefore, only way we can do it is allow them to destroy it, and then we got to rebuild. We got to rebuild, but we got to allow them to destroy it.
Tulsa, Oklahoma wasn't a social movement. It wasn't a mass movement. But I was saying that we didn't have the resources. We just because of oppression, because of segregation, we didn't have the resources to employ the Black Tulsa community.
They built up their resources on our backs. They fabricated their resources at our dismay. So that we didn't have those resources because yes, our resources were basically all, or the fruits of our resources went to their enjoyment. So
but today we're the richest slaves that ever existed. You know what I mean? So we really don't have that excuse today because, like I said,
we're not making excuses.
We might be the richest slaves only because we live in the richest country. That's it. Everything is relative.
Relative or not, the thing is that the power to make the changes is within our hands and inside of us versus on the outside. You know what I mean? Looking for someone else to do something for us.
Pulling ourselves up from our own bootstraps. I don't
I
think.
mean, I always fall back on that. I always fall back on that because, again, you know, I'm all about accountability. Is never going to be someone else's fault. You know, or where together in unity. I don't believe that there's nothing that, you know, if the millions of so-called black people in America, you know, were united today, and we just started just on the economic front. You know, I think that is bigger than economics. I think there's a moral type of compass we need to adopt as well to go along with that. Let me say that. You know what I mean?
That's number one.
If economic, I agree. That should be number one. But even if economically we pull those resources and said, look, okay, we can agree to where we want to get a strong education, have our children come out of college, you know, with an actual real degree without having any debt, you know, and then at the same time making sure that we're able to address our own needs in terms of what we eat and what's being put on the table, you know, that which has a focus on health and wellness, you know what I mean? Then that right there alone, along with, you know, like I said, I got to go with the moral, you know, compass as well, because, you know, that's what's going to guide it. You know, that would change our conditioning, you know, and that's not what looking to as Democrats or Republicans doing anything for us, you know, and then once we have that respect, and showing that we don't have to lean on you or beg on you to solve our challenges, then now that changes the whole game in and of itself.
But we need you to mind your business and not work against us to be our own solution as well.
Bro, but that's business. You know, I mean, you always gonna have people working against you. But like I said, that can't be the excuse.
It's not an excuse.
Whatever's thrown at us, you have to analyze it, adopt smart policy and strategies to contradict it. You know what I mean, and to offset those challenges and keep it pushing. You know
to the extent that you can control anything that influences what you're doing, you should do, and that's your obligation.
You can control
if you want to get it right. That having been said, that doesn't mean that you don't call out for the person working against you. It doesn't mean that you don't point out the person working against you. The bottom line is, in order to deal with your adversary, you need to acknowledge your adversary. You need to acknowledge your adversary's maneuvers.
Agreed. That's part of what I'm talking about.
That's the Democratic Party. There's an adversary. We got to see what their movement is like towards us as a people. So what I'm saying, and the brother made a valid point about the brother at the bottom. I don't know your name, my brother. Excuse me, but he made Afro-agnostics. Okay, I'm a form of that, brothers. I'm gonna let you know that. So, but listen, hey, you made a valid point. You said we are who we are because of the richest country in the world, right? And we know this. They became rich by colonizing. Well, we as black men now need to understand what's at the forefront of all this right now. Their kingdom is being challenged. Their kingdom was their military might and their dollar. Both of them being challenged by the world today. So all this bickering back and forth over political parties and who and what we gonna go for it, you ain't got no action at that no more. Your whole action right now is survival, because you got major countries that's coming against America harder than she ever been challenged in history. We talking about the Babylonian system, period. That's been around for thousands of years. It's being challenged by oppositions more harder than any time since Genghis Khan. So what we are looking at here is what we should be asking, will America survive the next 4 years? Period. And if we all can come to that conclusion, say, well, she might or she might not, I think that as a people, we should be moving on those stances in preparation, because that preparation of their fall is our rise. But that's only if we can survive the cliff. That's what we should really be talking about, because I don't think we talk about Kamala and Donald Trump. They got enemies that are powerful that's coming against this union. That Donald Trump even said himself, he don't think he can save it. Because it's not about America no more. They've been stealing resources in these countries and say, I want my resources back. I want your military out of our lands. And it is taking place. The brother mentioned earlier, they got 800 military bases, actually 746 military bases around the world. And they are kicking them out every day and challenging their power. They don't want America's fiat currency. They said, back it up. That's how you break her. She won't be able to get all these resources for her military and her military weapons if she don't have the resources in her land.
Hey, hold on, man.
They're killing her.
I don't know these misogynistic terms refer, her and her land, and I don't know. I think we need to go beyond that. But I will say that we have to be in position so that we can be allies to those who challenge the power of the United
Exactly.
States. I
Exactly.
think
Go food.
post war, during the Cold War, there was an opportunity because there was another power, and we were in many of our movements in alliance with those,
Agree. Agree.
non-alignment movements, those communist, those socialist movements. But definitely, we want to organize and be in position. But I think I'm kind of confused about this individual accountability as opposed to how we've already made the gains that we've made. We made those gains through organizing and through making demands on those in power. And when you make a
Where?
demand,
The civil rights movement was an
It's a
actual real
contract.
thing. I'm just saying, but you say what you want to say, but we've lived on the other side of it. I'm just saying that it was a movement that had a significant impact on Black people's ability to function and maneuver in this country. You're talking about people's livelihoods. My parents, we grew up, I should say my parents, my mother grew up in segregated South. You know what I'm saying? I always point out to people, I was born 3 years after Martin Luther King was assassinated in the very same, state and country that, sorry, in this very same city that he was assassinated in. I mean, we're not terribly removed from those things. So I'm just saying that when you consider what those people were able to do as opposed to what they're able to do now, I don't want to pretend like that wasn't nothing. That's kind of an insult.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that at all. I'm saying that absolutely it starts with individual being accountable to self, but then again, part of that then it starts to extend to a group. You know what I mean, and how we work in coordinating, with others. You know what I mean, and it takes that a group to accomplish bigger things. Obviously, you know what I mean. So I'm not saying that's not a part of the problem or the solution. But going back to what you said, in terms of being what was being done back then, we got to look at what the facts are today. Then we had, the church, if you will, as being the foundation of that organizing, that took place. You know what I mean? Today, I'm not sure what sort of infrastructure that we have in place that the masses of us, will be able to spring from. You know what I mean? And then also, being that we were in the church doesn't mean we were perfect, right? But there definitely was more of a conservative, a type of mindset to where having families, mother and father present, a legacy, in terms of children, and expectations, in terms of how we move and how we represent our families, those things were definitely more prominent. And today, the whole social construct has been flipped upon its head. You see what I'm saying?
Agnostics and Afro agnostics, when you see me nodding my head when he's talking about church, I'm using the root word assembly. So when you guys were organizing with the Afro with the Malcolm X movement, to me that's church. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that these organizations of whatever this is how this is making a fist. I know the brother Yusuf has talked about a time. We need to pull our resources, pull our voting power. That's going to give you your greatest strength. So again, I wasn't trying to make this a religious argument as much as just assembly and organization.
I mean, I don't know if this is irrelevant, but because a lot of emphasis is always put on the civil rights movement, and that was just one phase of the Black liberation movement. The other phase was the Black Power movement. So it's not about civil rights per se, whatever with that. It's about a liberation movement, liberation struggle for power. The Black Power movement made white people give more favoritism towards the civil rights movement because they didn't want to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? So, they kind of catered to the civil rights movement. So, you have a lot of things in play. But I think that this whole, I don't know what exactly is what is meant by working on ourselves, because when you join an organization and you're working with others to get things done, you are working on yourself. So these things are simultaneous. There's not like I have to work on myself. I have to get my
no. I think when you talk about working on yourselves, you're talking about, first of all, let's say I'm making such and such amount of money. I may have resources where I can make more money. I have a certain degree of education. I can get more education. That's a way that I can, as far as my family, as far as, being a good role model, as far as, really seeing to my children's mental health needs and social needs and whatever. These are things that I would say that are actually taking control and impacting and building yourself up. So I think
health and wellness.
Yeah, there's things that you do. There's some people that just don't give a damn. And they're not trying to be part of the solution. You know what I'm saying? They are actually part of the problem. So I'm saying making a decision to be part of the solution is a step of working on yourself and an example and an expression of working on yourself. So I'm just saying that I do think you don't do anything without deciding, hey, I'm going to be a decent person, or I'm going to be a better person, or I'm going to actually I'm not just going to allow whatever the hell. I'm going to actually take some type of control to the extent that I can take control. To me, that's the first step out the door. You know what I'm saying?
Accountability.
That's what it's at. That's where it's at. And I know it's a bad word in our community, in particular with, it's with the whole community, you know what I mean? Let me say it like that, you know what I mean? It's with the whole community, and again,
you don't want to say the AB word.
There, that's a launching point. And then from there, then there's a lot more that could be accomplished. But just to add on to what you were saying, nice in terms of, looking from within, like I mentioned, I blurted out health and wellness, better decisions with what limited resources we might have. How do I allocate that? You know what I mean? My moral compass, what are some things that, I could do to grow and then make myself, even, someone worthy of coming among a group, and that's what one thing I loved about the nation, is that, there was absolutely a high moral code and standard that was present, whether everyone did it or not. That's a different argument, but there is that, at its foundation and at its core. And that's what's key, because in order for us to have unity, we have to have law. You know what I mean? We have to define what is right, what is wrong. And right now, there is, because of, many of our people who have gravitated towards liberal policies within the Democrat, party, some of that is incongruent, especially when it comes to masculinity, and when it comes to, again, this LGBTQ, promotion, within, that framework, is that, there's certain things that's just not going to be congruent, with those that hold more, conservative values, in particular, it's just not something that, will blend well,
Okay, can we pivot, and I want to talk about the thing we mentioned earlier about Black people being indigenous to the Americas, or the LGBTQ thing. So,
let's chat. We can touch on both, but then definitely what we want to wrap up on, is that we haven't made it to, yet, that I think was critical. One of the main reasons why I want to go ahead and continue on with this dialogue, is dealing with that last part of the interview, which was the Trump Economic Club of Chicago one. Because that was one to where, again, I forgot who said it, but someone said it's the economy, stupid. What's motivating the voters more than anything, and has been so for a long time, is dealing with the economy. Money. The well-being as of this country and whatnot. So I definitely want to get into that. But again, so to me, again, when we really look at, I understand that. That the masses of our people, they've been taught, that we all were once over in Africa. Then, white people came and stole us from the continent, threw us on these ships, packed us in. We all know the familiar photo, packed us in, to these ships, shipped us over here to America, and then made us slaves. I know that's the narrative, but again, that's not the reality. That might be the narrative, but it's absolutely not the reality. The reality
didn't happen. You said it didn't happen. You saying that wasn't
brother, be self-left, man.
He might be back. It might have been a power
thing.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he might be back. So again, what sparked this part of the dialogue was when I said that, that the majority of us were here already and didn't come from somewhere else. You know what I mean? And I stand by that. I'll share my screen, with you here in a moment. But let's start with looking at various phenomenon that is not only documented as being here in America, but through South America, as well as Central America too. And that's starting with various pyramids, as well as the Olmecs, which are these big gigantic heads, there were some here as well as in America, but you see them still in Mexico to this day, of these African features and faces made into these big stone monuments, that again are still present to this day. Let me bring up some pictures and whatnot here. So this concept that what people also forget is.
So you said sharing the screen. That's not happening now. You're not.
Yeah, it's not happening now. Yeah, I gotta go to it because I'm talking simultaneously and whatnot. So I gotta go to the screen and whatnot.
I'm just making sure because I don't know how to do it, but I know you did it last time, so I salute you. You understood.
Yeah.
While you're getting that ready, and then maybe I want to just kind of talk to the audience, and maybe
go ahead.
If I can get and see if you agree or disagree, because I'm not disputing or trying to debunk your claim yet. I just want to. So, would you agree that this notion, this idea that there were already black people here present in the Americas prior to the transatlantic slave trade? Do you believe a lot of this is based on the findings that came largely from a lot of certain Afrocentric writers like Cheikh Diop? They came before America, and those notions, and also the teachings of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Noble Ali and so forth. Would you believe that most of the information we have or notions we have come from those two sources?
Yeah, I would say that those definitely contributed, to that. I wouldn't say that's the absolutely not the sole, focus. Even we went beyond that and just again look at the various, monuments, if you will, that are here. Some of which have, that are no longer here. But I think the Moors in particular. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying like the people who look at these type of artifacts, anthropologists, the vast majority of anthropologists, I mean, the 99% do not advocate the view that, say, for instance, the Olmec, the heads, represent people of African descent, because the artifacts that we have of those people and their descendants that are still there today, we see how they look. They are indigenous people. And I think that, because I was a part of the Afrocentric thinking, that's a particular strand within Afrocentric thinking. Not all Afrocentric thinkers think that way. Just for the audience to know, there's a particular strand of Afrocentric thinking where they conclude somehow that black people, the black man, somehow we were black people in Africa. There was no need to be black in Africa, but we were black people, and we spread throughout the globe, everywhere. And everywhere you see advanced architecture, civilization, there's a strand of Afrocentric thinkers who will say, black people did that. We started Indus Valley civilization. We started the Yellow Valley civilization. We started the civilizations in Mesoamerica. We were there in the beginning, pre-Columbian Africans and blah, blah, blah. I think, not all Afrocentrics even agree with that. Only a strand of Afrocentrics advocate that view.
Yeah, I would say even the definition of what is, Afrocentric, if you will, who are they? Some people would just say the only thing that qualifies you to be that would be, kinky hair, and darker skin and more melanated skin.
Afrocentric, people who, Afrocentric academians. That's what I'm talking about specifically.
Yeah, here in America is what you're saying. Within the American college, institutions.
It's a philosophy. It's a philosophy, and it's it's a perspective. I hold to that perspective in a lot of different ways, but I do not hold to the notion that black people were indigenous to the Americas. I just don't see any genetic evidence. I don't see any archaeological, anthropological evidence to support that claim very well. But I'm gonna listen to what you're saying here. So, is this the best piece of evidence that?
Well, before we do that, I want to clarify. So what you're saying is that you're saying that the people that were indigenous may not fit your criteria of black, but none of us are disputing that all of these people migrated from Africa, right?
No. I'm saying the people that have populated the Americas, there's evidence of the crossing of the Bering Strait, them coming from Asia, and the Native Americans, the Cherokee, the Powhatan, sometimes I mispronounce the Tiani or the Taino people from Haiti and Dominican Republic and those places. Those are indigenous people that have been here for about 10,000 years at least.
Yeah, so maybe a better way to describe it would be, melanated, if you will.
That's what I'm saying. To me, this sounds
but you like I said, I'm gonna share. Like I said, I'm just gonna. If we want to have this debate further, then like I said, that's a whole different show. Just this wasn't even the focus of the show we were doing today. But I was gonna just share some comments, and I'll share a couple of little slides and whatnot, to kind of illustrate, some of what I'm talking about.
You're gonna have to teach me this. You're gonna have to teach me this.
But again, at one point in time, it was said that the continents were a lot closer than what they were now. And there were various land bridges and whatnot that linked Africa up directly with Central America and whatnot. So
hold on, that was hundreds of millions of years ago.
That's what some people say. 100 million years. I'm not arguing that. But what I'm saying is that
at that time, though.
Yes, we were.
But again, even if it were 100 millions of people, even it was 100 millions ago, as you know, inside the teachings, we taught that the planet goes back trillions of years. You know what I mean? So again, the land was connected at one time, and there were not what we would call white people present then.
It was called the Pangea. When it was connected, it was called the Pangea.
There you go. At one point, then that means that we were all over the globe. At the end of the day, you find us everywhere. Europe, you know what I mean? Australia, there's not any person you can find darker skin in the world.
Who was the us that you find? Who was quote unquote us?
I'm saying, melanated beings. I'll say it like that. Melanated beings. You know what I mean? Which doesn't mean just solely restricted to just kinky hair, although some, did have kinky hair, some might have been straight, but, darker than myself, darker than all of us, at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
That's not quite the claim that a lot of sovereignist movements and a lot of people in the certain splinter groups from the Moorish Holy Temple of Science and a lot of Afrocentric, that's not the claim that they're making. They're making the claim specifically African people are indigenous to the entirety of the planet, some even go to the extent that the slave trade never even took place. They retort, where are the slave ships? Mm-hmm. We didn't arrive here.
Yeah, they do.
We were slave ships. We were already here prior. This whole notion of being brought here on ships is a myth.
Right. And the math, I would agree with that point. The math really doesn't add up. But like I said, that's a whole different show. But just like I said, just in concept. Just thinking that we all know that you're not getting any other races, unless you start with the black and brown, and then everything else has to derive from that. The last place that the so-called white people found on the whole planet is where? Right here.
Wait. I thought you were talking about ships. I need to clarify. When I was shaking my head, I'm shaking my head to the notion that it sounded like you were saying that I agree that the ships didn't bring black people over.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Not like how it's been presented to us, where we see that classic picture.
You're saying it wasn't printed on the scale, but you're saying it still took place.
No, I'm saying for sure that some people that came as crew and whatnot, that were slaves and whatnot, came over here. Crew? But in terms of how the slave ships were presented to us, to where all these people were packed in and, and they were just sitting in their own defecation and urine for months at a time, where they made, their way over here to the continents. When you start doing the math and adding up, the weight of the feces, it just add it all up and just look at who would survive such a journey and whatnot. It just the math doesn't add up.
It's
like
called
I said,
spoilage.
I could be a whole separate show. And then again, where
spoilage.
are all these slave ships?
It's called
The
spoilage
ocean, the
and
ocean would be
reproduction.
the ocean would be a freeway, and also you got to take into consideration of navigation at that time. There was no motors. You're going with the winds, so you have to have a certain season when you're selling these ships across this water, and you talking about bringing in over 100 million Africans, and maybe 12 million survive, as they said, right? You do the math of that, and based on ships and how many is able to get on these ships, including cargo, it doesn't add up. Now we are not saying that there have been since the 1800s. Since the 1800s, when steam ships and all that took place, we're not saying that Africans didn't come here then. That's not what we're saying. But we're saying that there was foundational blacks here in this land before anybody came here, and my great 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 grandparents were here. They own
What's your
land.
best piece of
It has
evidence
been
for that?
owning land.
What's your best
It's
piece of
still
evidence
on.
for
It's
that
still
claim?
on the land. Say it again.
What is your best piece of evidence to support that claim? Your best piece of evidence to support that claim?
My best evidence to support that claim is my what you call my ancestry.
Well, you did your genetic ancestry?
I did. I got the book right here at my house. Well, I go back to my great 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 grandmother and grandfather on both sides. Well, I go back further with Benny White,
Okay,
further
okay,
than
I'm
that.
saying
We
that's,
go. We go.
that's
I'm talking about back into the 1600s. And
I'm
we
saying
have
that's
no
your
records of
personal.
slavery.
I'm saying that's your personal ancestry. I got you, but
Yes.
the
Hmm.
majority of Black people who take genetic testing, they have very little Indian in their blood.
What
They
is
have
very little
seventy
India?
percent.
What is
They have
Indian?
they have 70% or more. Generally speaking, Black people considered Black are genetically. We have 70% Niger Congo descent in our DNA that traces back to West Africa. We are of Niger Congo descent, undoubtedly. So how did we get that if we were already
Yeah,
here?
Because we
we
all
were
came from
here.
there. At the end of the
We
day,
were there. Listen. We were the seafarers before anybody. Before anybody. We've
Right.
been here. We've been
But
here.
you kind of contradicting yourself when you said that the way the lack of steamboats limited the migration and the ability to come over in mass, but somehow we've been here even at a prior
I didn't
time
say limited. I
when
said they
ships
just
were
start coming
less
into the.
were more crude than
Uh,
they were later.
what I'm saying, the slave trade, far as bringing the African labor over here to the states, they come into the steamships. Just like the white folks that really didn't migrate here. When we're looking at the pilgrims that came land in 1492, they were exiled out of Spain. They brought their peoples, right? And they was coming here in what you would call some sailboats. They had to follow the current in order to get here. They can't go straight across the Atlantic. No sail ship can go straight across the Atlantic. They got to
Well,
follow the winds and the current. Am I
well,
right or
why?
wrong?
They manipulate it. They don't just get in the ship and then the
Yeah.
Lord just takes you by wind. I'm just saying that
Uh,
there's dynamics of influence of a sail.
Exactly.
You need
So how
wind.
do you
You
have
need
that
wind.
consistent flow of so how do you have that consistent flow of slave trade? Because if you do the math, you would have to. I'm talking about the ships would be like would be like the freeway over there in Los Angeles, going
remember,
across the water.
remember that the slave, the enslaved, the captured people, the kidnapped people on the boats were just one third of the trade. You had sugar cane, you had molasses, you
We
had
know.
weaponry, you had
Mhm.
other cash crops. So how did they get to and fro? How do we explain the accumulation of wealth? The textile industry, for instance, was based on king cotton coming from the south. How
Because
do we
they were
explain?
captured because listen, check this out, fam.
I'm just saying that
America became a business. America became a business. They
two more
captured
sentences.
they captured
Two more
our own
sentences, I
peoples
promise.
in our own land and made us prisoners of war. We worked on a
Repeat that.
plantation was what we would call a warehouse today, with no rules
Repeat
though, with
that.
no regulations.
Can you rewind that? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
I said America was a business. Yes, cotton was king, and also was sugar cane, right? We were captured in our own land to work on these plantations, which you would call a warehouse today. They made us work without regulations. They put us in we still in these plantations today, when you look at it. The same warehouse, the same system, but it's much larger. And you got a little bit more freedom. You got more regulations, I would say. You are a prisoner
Yeah,
in
so
your
I'm saying
own land.
your best piece of evidence that we were not displaced en masse, people from West Africa, is your own
Family
personal
journal. Family
ancestry.
journal.
That's the best piece of evidence.
No. I mean, you go look at what's his name, Plecker, and Marvin. What's his name? Melville. I'm trying to think of his name. The Pan African studies leader who died back in the '60s, who brung up all this ideal. This all ideology, man. In order to steal your land, to make you give up your land, they got to disconnect you from your land by saying you're not from here. And then you freely mentally give it up. Oh, I'm not from here anyway. So we allow them to be our leaders. We allow them to be our presidents because we don't realize this is our land.
So what you're asserting is that people came over here in small minority in boats, and they were able to conquer
With the help
people
of
that
niggas, with the help of niggas.
they were able to conquer people that were
Yeah,
established in fortitude.
yeah,
I'm just saying that
yes, yeah,
you're using
yes,
sort of like referential logic to make this
yes,
argument, and I would
yeah.
argue that argument flies in the face. It's one of the reasons why
Look
if
at it
an alien,
today.
let me
Look
finish my
at.
point, brother. Let me finish my
Go
point,
ahead.
brother. It's the reason why it'd be such a problem for an alien race to come here and to dominate here, because they'd have to bring all their resources with them. But all the resources and people are here. I'm just saying it's the nature
Right.
of it that makes it very difficult to accomplish, to take that over, as opposed to stealing children and being able to indoctrinate them from the beginning,
No,
and then you
no.
let them grow and you breed them and you produce numbers. I'm just saying that when you look at it on its
Exactly.
face, when you look at it on its face, this model is a less fantastic model to wrap your mind around. So I'm not telling you that what you're saying is not true. I never do that. I'm just talking about this. I'm saying that the smell test doesn't lend to that. But that may still very well, the things that you're saying may very well be the truth. I can't testify one way or the other.
Well, I say we do a whole show on this because it makes
well, you got some great arguments. Your arguments, I'm telling you, your argument.
I mean,
Afro-agnostic has some arguments that you guys are
I mean,
not really looking at. He's
there
making
were
some
there were
death blows. He's making
there
some
are
death blow
there,
arguments.
in the early days, even before the 1619, where with the English, there were over 100 people on the Mayflower, on the ship that came to Virginia later. That earlier that year was 1607 1607 was not the Mayflower. 1620 was the Mayflower. But there were hundreds of people that came on the Mayflower. I mean, these ships have the capacity, the carrying capacity, and you have to remember the motive. What was the motive? Why did they come over here in the first place? They came over here one single solitary reason, was to take the land so that they can grow crops and export those crops to Manchester and to England. That was the sole exclusive reason they came, and why the ruling class in England and Manchester financed these ships. So why would they
Are we
make that
talking
investment
1619?
if they couldn't mass export things to and fro? That was the whole idea. One ship took at least 1 to 2 years to build. It was a multi-million-dollar project. You don't make that type of investment if you don't plan on the mass exportation and importations of goods. Black people just happened to be one of the goods that they were exporting, but they were exporting cash crops. They had the capacity to do, shipping, or to ship things back and forth.
I don't think we're disagreeing, with the fact that there were not
disrespecting my alpha. You're trying to say that our Holocaust didn't happen. You're basically
That's what I'm saying.
that
That's what I'm saying.
No. Can I interject? Let me
saying.
interject when he made that statement. Let me interject real quick why he made that statement that we saying that our Holocaust did not happen. We saying that the Holocaust did happen, but not in the way that they explain it to us. That was, excuse my language, was a mental fuck, right? We were taken from the land. This land is more valuable than any money or currency or anything that they can offer us, right? They took the land and took us out to sea, which is under the maritime law, and say, hey, we come from another corporation, what they incorporated called Africa. That's another corporation. They made our mind and took it off the land and gave us to another corporation that they created after Africa News called Africa. Then they brought us back on land with our birth certificates and said that we are niggers, blacks, and all these other people. We are saying no, the Holocaust has happened, but not in the way they said. We want the
Okay,
land, we want the money, we
let's
want it
go one
all
route
back.
there.
We want it
So
all back.
I would argue that 99% of the people 98% who identify as black on the U.S. Census are of African origin and slave descent, specifically West African origin and slave descent. Would y'all disagree with that or agree with that?
I agree with it. I think they
You
both.
remember when they sent
in
all
two
those black
different
folks
ways.
to?
But
You remember when they sent
before
all them black folks back to Liberia, right?
Student X and Yusef agree or disagree with that?
Yeah. No, so I agree with it, but not like in the way that you're inferring. I'm saying that the people in general on this planet, we all could be, the majority of us can be traced back to that region. You know what I mean? There's no doubt. But when we came
Not to
from
West
that
Africa.
region, when we came from that region is what would be, where we'll be at odds at. You know, I'm saying.
Okay, let's put it. Hold on. I'm sorry.
Originated from there. We were here already, is what I'm trying to say. The majority of us were here already, even though some of us had origins from Africa.
Okay, excuse me, brother. So
does that make sense?
At the end of slavery, 1865 or so, they did a consensus, and I can't remember. There were 3 to 4 million black people counted on the consensus. Where did the majority of those black people, were they indigenous already here in pre-Columbian times? Or did they come here via slave ship? Which one, in your opinion?
Yeah. I say the masses were already here. We're here already. That's not to say that we didn't. That we definitely had. Obviously people that were brought over here, not necessarily in the way it was depicted in some of the pictures that we saw, where everyone's packed in, side by side, on top of one another. I'm not saying that. You know what I mean?
That
but
one picture. They showed that one picture
as being those that worked on the ships, you know what I mean, that bring the other goods and services that was coming over here already. You got to remember the land of milk and honey, the last place that white people found on the whole globe was America. This was it. This was the last place they found, the last place they settled. We were already here. We already had government here. There was all different type of, so-called, races and entities that were here already, all dark skinned. It was already here. It was already a civilization here. You see what I'm saying?
So
to the point to where when they first arrived, if you remember the story, they needed to come and get help from those that were indigenous here just to survive the winter.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I got you. I'm saying, so when they did the consensus in 1865, the 4 million black people that were on the consensus, on the census, they did not come here via slave ship. So
no,
according to you, okay. And what is your best piece of evidence that they did not do, that they were not here via the slave ship, besides your personal ancestry? Because you may have.
I said we'll do a show on it, and we'll come with the evidence and whatnot, have it organized. Because
let me ask your brother something. Brother, have you ever been to the Library of Congress in Washington D.C.?
Yes.
Have you been through their books? How did you register? How were you able to get in and read the books?
I don't think I actually read. I can't remember. It was a long time ago, but I think it was. I don't know. I've been there a few times, but I've been to the Library of Congress.
Okay, so let me explain something to you. Okay, we had to when we went, we had to register, right? There was a registry that you had to go through, and you had to get approved by a member of Congress in order to get in, right? So when you got and I learned this from brothers that are mentors of mine, right? That help me understand a lot of this truth as well, right? The Library of Congress have our truth, right? And when they went in to study, this took them all the way back to Spain and go and did a little bit more research from what they had gathered from the Library of Congress here in the United States of America. When they went back and examined everything, brother, it wasn't about the Europeans coming here at first to take America, our land, which I'll say. It was all about helping us because our ships were being pirated. Brother Charles mentioned earlier there was a government's already here. There has been governments already here. And when we say, how did this happen? Just like it happens today. Our people sells us out every time just to get ahead of someone. When you study the ideal of tribalism, tribalism is already a separation within the families. And when you learn how to manipulate those tribes against another tribe, right?
But,
You look
but,
at cowboys and Indian movies today. You have some of them so-called Indians helping the blue coats, and some are
but,
helping the gray coats
but,
fighting,
but
right?
why? Okay. Why?
You know what?
Why?
Go ahead,
Bro,
go ahead.
I'm saying we're
Go
gonna
ahead.
do a show on this, you know
Yeah,
what I mean? You know, because I
Go
don't think
ahead.
we're gonna get any
yeah,
further
and I'm
without
definitely,
having the truth organized
I'm
and then
definitely,
shared. You
I'm
know,
definitely running out of time. But I will say this: one of the things that the brother Afro Agnostics is arguing that I don't think that you quite guys are wrapping your heads around is this saying that when they do genetic tests of the indigenous people of these things, they don't, they process differently than the people that identify as foundational blacks and stuff like that. That literally, if what you're saying was as you understand it, those genetics would suggest differently. However, I will say this argument in your favor that I think that you guys have a different definition of black. And I think that when you consider, if you really think about it as melanated versus not melanated, I mean, it's kind of hard to dance around the fact that there was most of the melanated people here, were indigenously here or something like that. I mean, unless you're saying that those people were wiped out and that's why the
Melanated
numbers are up. So again, but I don't want to press too much
is
longer.
melanated black.
Huh?
they said it's
Is it
melanated black.
melanated black?
Well, see, that's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying. See, that's what I'm saying. It's a definition issue that we're kind of struggling with.
I mean, it should be for Democrats because they keep arguing Kamala is black. You know what I mean?
No, I think
So I understand that there's really
that's
confusion
I would say that
that's taking place. You know,
I would say that that's a
it's so simple. We are the black people, especially the more darker
you know what
are.
you know what I'm gonna say something. You brought that up. That's you are willing to claim a blackness that is a further stretch than the simple blackness that a Kamala Harris is. That's kind of funny.
Hers is not simple blackness. You know what I mean?
Having said that, we are up against it, brother. It's 2:00. I want to maintain some type of peace in my household. So
everybody is black except Kamala.
Yeah, exactly. But let's say we've created a great springboard for another middle-aged mutant ninja politics. Okay. Afro Agnostics, you have been a great contributor to this forum. Please, please, please come back to it when we have another show so we can discuss some of these things. We had a great thing, Brother Youssef. As always, you do your thing. Great points. Goes without saying, Student X. I know you don't like to be acknowledged as the star, but this wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you. So that's what makes you the star. But that having said, please like, share, and subscribe. You don't have to agree with any of us, all of us, or whatever, but we do appreciate you watching and commenting and saying whatever you got to say. So that having said, like, share, subscribe. Representing for the Focus Up family. Peace out.
Peace out.